I'm just here asking myself, Jesus, if I were to see you face to face now, these are the beautiful questions I'll be asking you. And the questions are, how did you handle Gethsemane? How did you pray? How did you groan? How? Why were you not bitter, Like, how did you groan? How were you able to make that decision in the midst of so much betrayal, so much thoughts of you getting a consequence of what you did not do? Just being, human and quite practical here. How did you handle the thoughts of being left alone? First by the people you spent the last 3.5 years with, and even your brothers you spent, the last 33.5 years with. How did you process the thought of being left alone? How did you process the thought of being betrayed? How did you process the thought of being hurt? Okay, now that's been human. Let's talk about the Son of God aspect. How did you process the thought of becoming sane? Bible said you were led, to the slaughter like a lamb, and you did not say anything. Like, how did you do that? How were you still able to pray? How were you still able to concede, and even with all your vigor and crying, and all you could still submit to is that let the will of God be done? How did you do that? How did you pray? How did you pray, God? How did you pray? How did you look forward to the joy that was set ahead? How did you lift up your head from being downtrodden and the pressure around you at those moments, and to behold that which no one could understand at those moments? Even your trusted Peter wasn't even going to come to terms with you with respect to that. How did you pray, God? Help me to pray. Help us to pray, Jesus. How did the thought that you were gonna be left alone by your father, and for once you will feel like a man, when Hebrews will talk about it, it said that it was a little lower than the angel. It said right now, it said all things had not even been kept under his feet. So right now, he said it's still lower than the angel. He has not been lifted. How did you handle that thought as a mortal being? How did you embrace dying for what you did not do? How did you see the greater prize? How did you build? How did that glory, thoughts, and prayers in John 17 even sit on your heart, Jesus? How did you pray in the midst of contradictions? Help our hearts to pray, God. Help us to lift up our eyes to you in the midst of many troubles. Help us to know that there's a birthright in the grapes. That's that which we have with you before the foundation of the world. Help us to conceive that. Help that to stay in our heart. Help shift our gaze from our troubles and set our hearts upon you, God, in the good times and especially in the terrible time. Teach us to pray, God. Embolden our hearts to lift up our heads, to see you alone, God. To see you alone. To see you alone, Jesus. Amen.